All right, the red light is on, so I believe we're live. Just wait for people to join. Thank you to those who are joining. So we've got quite a few people in already. So I think we can probably get started, and as people filter in, we'll probably start to get into the real conversation then. So hello everybody who's watching live and anybody who's watching on demand as well. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Elliot Clarkson. I'm Vice President of Global Marketing here at Amplify, and I'll be your host. As a leading data consultancy at Amplify, we come up against a similar challenge with lots of organizations we work with and speak to where data catalog projects either falter or fail altogether. So we're here today with our friends from Alex Solutions, who are a Gartner recognized player in the data catalog and enterprise governance space, to talk about the reasons that data catalogs can fail, what the wider impact is that it can have, and some tips from our two experts here, on how you can help some of those projects succeed. So first expert, I'm joined by my colleague David Neal, who's one of our consulting directors at Amplify and heads up our governance and metadata management practice. So David, welcome to the show.
Hi.
The show? Is it a show? I don't know. Welcome to
the... It is now.
And we're also obviously delighted to have Ozge Mertyurek with us, who's Director of EMEA at Alex Solutions, who's also not feeling too well. So Ozge, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Edith. Happy to be here.
Good. I'm glad you're here. Just a quick one for anybody who is watching live. We do have a comment section one side of the screen, so we will be taking questions throughout the show, throughout the webinar. If anybody has any questions, drop them in the comments. We will do our best to get round to answer as many as we possibly can. And if we don't get around to anything, we can always follow up afterwards and make sure we do get around to them at some point. So we'll get started. So. David, I'll start with you. Like any of the kind of broad data disciplines we deal with at Amplify, we know how important it is to think strategically about your data capabilities in general. What kind of challenges arise here when it comes to data catalog?
I think by far the most common one that we see, Elliot, is fundamentally that metadata or data catalog as a capability isn't formally recognized in your data strategy, or even that you don't have a kind of documented, clear and supported metadata strategy even as a standalone initiative. So the result here is that you find yourself in a place where you've not got a strategic approach to that capability. So you're not thinking about how you're going to guide that capability for organizational benefit in a strategic way. Potentially you run the risk of kind of seeing your efforts or outcomes that you realize from your data cataloging effort to be disconnected or misaligned with what your broader data strategy is executing, and you're probably going to find it difficult to link it to business objectives and business value points as well. There's also kind of elements around kind of a potential loss of support. So if this is being tacked on as something additional to or adjacent to your data strategy, then you're running the risk of people kind of slowly losing support for the initiative because they're not really seeing what it's doing. And perhaps most importantly, you're missing opportunities to exploit that metadata. That's the one that's easiest to forget. There's enormous opportunities with metadata and being able to exploit it in the right ways. And if you're not thinking strategically about it and being reactive, then you're maybe missing those chances to see value. And I think there's a couple of key ways in which we can kind of start to tackle that challenge, right? So the first is around fundamentally calling out metadata in your data strategy. It would be better if it's probably not a standalone strategy, but that's maybe an interim measure. Like get your metadata and the role of metadata called out in your data strategy and linking it to showing how it supports all your other capabilities and really helps you run your business as you look into the future. You should be able to, even if you're multiple steps removed from the business value realization, you could still be telling stories about how a catalog is going to help me understand and define my critical data elements. And I know that if I understand and define them, I can bring them in under governance. And I know that probably helps me mitigate some key business risks around that data. And that in turn probably helps me have better conversations with a regulator or more productive conversations with an investor. So you can see fairly quickly and relatively straightforwardly, you can link a data catalog and its value points through to business objectives and outcomes. Second point for me here would be, and I've said objectives already, is you need to set clear objectives for your data catalog, and you need to make sure that those value adds are linked back through to things like data governance, linked back through to things like your data strategy, and by extension to your business objectives. They should be folded into whatever measures or KPI structures you've got in your organization, so that again it doesn't feel like something different. And you should probably be looking at your data strategy execution roadmap and identifying areas or opportunities where your data catalog could really be accelerated in its development. So maybe there are some key initiatives on your roadmap that are going to be a perfect customer or a perfect use case for growing out the kind of core of your data catalog content, and potentially kind of using that to sort of promote adoption and kind of drive adoption of the platform overall.
For sure. And Ozge, from your perspective, from when Alex Solutions are looking at things around this strategic side of things, what kind of challenges do you see out there?
Yeah, thanks, David. I think you touched on very important points. I just want to add one more challenge that we see quite a lot, which is securing executive sponsorship. So when there is lack of executive sponsorship, data catalog implementation's impact on business becomes really limited. Without strong backing up from top management, data catalog projects can struggle gaining the necessary resources, budget, because as we said, there is a misalignment of priorities. And if the objectives aren't tied to the data strategy, then it becomes difficult to demonstrate value of the data catalog. And here there are some tips that we can share. Organizations can start with asking questions of why having a data catalog matters to the business, how can various businesses will be using it, who are the key stakeholders, and by answering these questions, executive teams will be aligned with the resource and budgeting needs, and then they will see this initiative as a business initiative with a certain value associated to it, rather than just another IT project.
For sure. I think that's a really good point. And I know we'll come on to the kind of people and cultural aspect of things later on today, but I think that getting stakeholder buy-in is massively important. And I think, again, we'll talk about this later, but I think that's one of the reasons that, when people either try again or go for a second round, or getting stakeholders to re-buy back into the data catalog is always a kind of hard thing as well. So yeah, it's a really good point. So one other question I had as well was it's around the implementation and the more technological side of a data catalog. It's obviously possible to go out there. There are tons of obviously very good data catalog solutions, Alex Solutions obviously being one of them, but when you actually try and implement it, that's where the kind of failure happens. So it's not necessarily the technology itself; it's the implementation process. So, David, from our perspective, from Amplifi, what kind of challenges would we typically see here?
Yeah, I think in this case, I'd like to pick on the topic of use cases a bit. So, like with many technologies, most technologies, all technologies, you need to define and prioritize the use cases you want to go after and when. So, you need to think about who is going to use my data catalog, what are they going to use it for, and why does that matter? The why is certainly the most important there, right? But if those outcomes and the impact of what you're trying to deliver are unclear, you start to venture into this sort of scattergun or panic mode where you're kind of delivering disjointed use cases or standalone use cases. Oftentimes that's when you'll reach for those technical use cases because you've got some data engineers or some data scientists or some data analysts that have some very clear and quite nicely packaged, technically focused use cases but they're almost like a distraction, and you run the risk of only delivering on those technical use cases and never really breaking through into those more business-oriented use cases. So, what tends to happen here is that ultimately the value that your catalog is adding it can be difficult to articulate. It can be difficult to tell that story if it's just coming in fits and starts.
Yeah.
There's also an element of I would call it like feature distraction. So sometimes with a technology, you get attracted by the shiny things, and you go and pursue them, and you sink more time into them than at least at that point in your journey you should. And so you actually get off the path. You get away from strategically what you should be aiming for and the use cases you should be delivering, and you're maybe kind of losing momentum as a result. And then ultimately, if you're chucking a lot of stuff into your catalog, but you're not necessarily linking it through to some properly delivered use cases, then you're ultimately at risk of creating a lot of noise in there, right? So it's going to make your catalog harder to use. It's certainly going to make it harder to manage if you're not careful, because you can't bring everything under governance in a scalable way straight off the bat, at least. And from an end user perspective, all of a sudden you're chucking them into this big sea of information and knowledge, some of which they recognize, most of which they probably don't. And you're starting to breed that kind of end user apathy, that frustration of, I came in here to find a thing because they told me it was the promised land, and then I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
My heart is broken. I'll just go back to whatever I was using before, which was probably Excel, right? So there's kind of 3 key points I want to call out here in terms of how we solve this. So set off with those use cases in mind first. So, focus on solving a problem. The common one that we will always start with as a kind of easygoing in position in terms of conversations with clients is, what critical reports do you have? How much do you know about where that data comes from, and the extent to which that data can be trusted? That can be a great use case to get your catalog initiative off the ground and focus on delivering real business value. You want to, like, off the back of that use case definition, you want to have a laser focus on the kind of people aspect of it. So who are my users in this case? Who are my personas? What will they be using it for? And how can we make sure I'm catering to their needs as I deliver against that use case? And then probably the last thing I would call out would be, like, only onboard the people you need to at the right time. If you just open the doors to everyone and everyone comes in, you're back to that issue I was highlighting earlier, where someone comes in looking for something and they can't find what they need, and maybe you've not even built a capability for them to call out what they want either, so you're kind of missing that opportunity too. If you take that structured use case approach, you know the people you're going after, and you're slowly introducing them in kind of phases so that you kind of grow that catalog adoption out more naturally.
For sure. And Ozge, I'm sure you guys at Alex Solutions see lots of these kind of implementations of a catalog. So from your perspective, what are some of the reasons that some of it fail, and what tips would you give people to make sure that their implementation goes to plan?
Yeah, sure. Here I want to talk about operating model and aligning implementation with this operating model, because operating model defines the interaction between different business functions, defines ownerships, and it's more clear what are the financial or operational risks are in the organization, who owns them, and how different personas, different functions collaborates in case there are some risks or challenges. And data catalog implementations are very similar to just regular operations in that organization, in a way that there should be clear ownerships defined. Those personas should know what they are expected to do, even during the implementation, because otherwise we can see lack of buy-in. Or even decision paralysis, because we usually see there's a really delay in implementations caused by the governance model wasn't clearly defined. So the decision-making process gets delayed, or there are some bureaucratic reasons that people are just pointing to each other, and this decision can't get made. So it just hindered the progress of doing the actual tasks. So really, I think we see the importance of clear ownerships, clear governance model to have successful implementations. And I think obviously David also touched on very, very good tips here. We can also say, we always just start saying, let's define a data governance framework, and it's a bit scary because it requires expertise, but also it doesn't need to be a complex one. So you can really start by defining key stakeholders, their roles in this model, and then they will start understanding how they will be using the catalog, using the metadata, and then they will get some business values out of it, but also they will help the overall success of the implementation, because there's that collaboration aspect that is established from the beginning. And I guess one other thing I want to say is we just encourage our customers to involve key stakeholders from the beginning. We host lots of workshops just to understand their pain points, just to understand their priorities. So this helps them to really own the catalog implementation, and when it comes to the rollout, they know already what parts of their business are reflected in the catalog, so it helps them to continue using the catalog and better adoption at the end.
For sure. I think it's interesting where you talk about the stakeholders and getting people, and it's all about the kind of how people are using the technology and how people are adopting it, and the key stakeholders making sure that it's not just an IT solution, it's a business solution that everyone in the business can use. I think one of the things that is important though is, and David, we talk about this a lot at Amplify, right, is the way that the data landscape tends to exist now is within these kind of like modern ecosystems where there are best of breed technologies all doing, the bit they need to do in that process, but they all need to work together and talk to each other. So, Ozge, from Alex's point of view, obviously, clearly data catalogs need to work well with other technologies to succeed. So during those catalog projects that perhaps don't work, what kind of issues do you typically experience in the kind of the integration and the kind of ecosystem approach?
Yeah, technology. Obviously, it's an important topic for us as a vendor, as a technology and solution provider. We understand how difficult it is to choose the right technology to solve data catalog needs. But I want to talk about not the vendor part of things, but more about defining the technology requirements of this catalog implementation. So what I mean by that is when this initiative starts, organizations tend to define all the technologies they possibly have in their landscape within the scope of the implementation. So that creates a poor design of the catalog with too many technologies listed to be integrated without really understanding is it critical for the business? It will bring really the value for the catalog, like maybe the complexity wasn't considered really, and then it also causes overinvestment. So when we have such a big scope of too many technologies to integrate with, obviously the size of the implementation increases, size of the cataloging increases, and it requires a bigger budget, and obviously the complexity makes it hard to make sure the implementation is controlled, at least more effectively in the beginning. So I would definitely suggest prioritize business value first. So just align the data catalog initiatives again with business goals. So ideally, yes, you want to bring all possible metadata into the catalog, but that can happen over time. So we just say, if you know what business domains that you'll focus on to show value of the catalog, then you can actually select which technologies they use, what scope within that technology they really need to bring into the catalog. So by defining these two small scopes, you can actually implement them very quickly, and you can show the business value quite quickly. And the other things that we discussed, the stakeholder buy-in, showing the value of the catalog will come naturally because you are controlling the scope. You know the integrations are very well designed in the beginning, and you can always take an iterative approach after the initial implementation, right? So since you set the foundations right with the right technologies, with the right scope, you can actually scale up from there quite easily. And also I guess the continuous improvement again is really important for technology aspect as well. You can have a roadmap of implementing a data catalog, and that will bring more technologies in the catalog over time. And you can also align this roadmap with your maturity framework, which is really how mature you are in the governance journey. And over time, I guess organizations will become more mature because more stakeholders, personas will know how to use the data catalog, but also the metadata in there will be richer in terms of technology or in terms of the business metadata in there. And it's just going to be a very valued product at the end.
For sure. And Ozge, I just mentioned there a maturity framework. We'll go through some of those at the end as well and just give people a kind of view of what some of those frameworks could look like and how they can help you with these implementations. But I mean, David, just quickly, obviously Ozge's talking about the technical side of things there. Have you got any insights from our side on give people
the technical limitations point is a good one. And there's kind of two sides to that coin from my perspective. And one I think is certainly more obvious than the other, although I hope the other will become more obvious in future, right? So one is can my catalog connect to the things in my landscape that I need it to connect to? And to Ozge's point, how much time and effort must I or do I expect to have to sink into any bespoke development or custom connectors or anything of that nature to both develop and then maintain those in the future? That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin that I'd love to hear more about when I speak with clients is, if I'm looking at my technologies, are they going to give me out the metadata that I need? Mm-hmm. What metadata might they serve up, and is that going to meet my needs both now and in the future? And I think that's the bit that I don't think organizations are necessarily thinking enough about, in conjunction with what do I need to connect to and how do I connect to it. And so obviously the net result here is that you're still in the same ballpark as some of the points that Ozge was mentioning. You've got those unforeseen costs. There's risks to kind of damaging the reputation of the data catalog initiative because you're maybe writing checks that you can't cash. So there's a need to kind of manage expectations perhaps, or walk certain things back. And ultimately, you've always got that kind of spectre looming over you of just sending people back to the way they did it before. There was a data catalog. Yeah. So you're either creating new silos for them to go and disappear into, or you're perpetuating the existence of the old silos that you're trying to get rid of. So if we're going to break all those knowledge barriers, we need to consider these challenges and make sure we're managing them up front. And I think there's a few ways that come to mind for kind of starting to solve that. So the obvious one is certainly as part of that technology selection process for your data catalog, doing your robust evaluation process as you would expect, right? But making sure that it's linked back to your data strategy and your organizational strategy, making sure you're getting an appreciation for what technologies it's going to need to connect to now and in the future. Thinking also about that execution roadmap that we were talking about earlier and saying, right, are there certain use cases here or certain technologies that would serve me well to focus on them sooner than later because I know that the catalog's going to play well with them, and then other ones that I definitely need to kind of manage more carefully. So it's all about expectation management. And then the other piece, when I was talking about the other side of the coin that we want to hear more of, and thinking about metadata related requirements for our technologies, let's make sure those are being surfaced in the kind of broader technology selection process. So think ahead to a really mature state where you want to have metadata analytics at play, and you want to gain insight from your metadata that's showcasing how your data across your organization is being used. And maybe you're wanting to serve some data observability use cases there. You're wanting to look after data pipelines. You're wanting to predict or recommend data usage, or you're wanting to automate data access or classification enforcement. These are all things that you might want to do in the future with a catalog, and you maybe don't quite know it yet, But if you're not demanding that, or really trying to understand what metadata you're going to be able to get out of your technologies as you change them, then you're maybe setting yourself up for a fall in the future, or one that you need to unpick.
For sure. Thank you both. They're both really good points, and I think there's a lot to unpick around the technology piece. Especially when it comes to making sure, like you said, David, there, making sure you're successful not just in the first 6 months, but in the 6 years you have the solution as well, right? You're set up for the future as well. So we talked about technology, and I know during this there's been a kind of common thread, especially I think with things like governance and data catalog. One of the biggest common threads is the technology is the enabler, but as always with anything, we talk about this, anything to do with data, but I think especially when it comes to things like governance and metadata, is the crucial role that people play in successful implementation. So I know we've talked a lot about things like stakeholders and all those kind of things, but Ozge, from Alex's point of view, is there anything else around the role people play that you would you want to call out?
Yeah, here I will call out two people-related aspects, which is communication, and also managing the cultural change properly. I think communication is more clear, because without clear communication, there's not much consensus between stakeholders. Again, the progress is not well understood, so it's just it can cause delays. But whereas the strong communication really helps to continue the healthy collaboration between different stakeholders. So I guess that's more straightforward. But managing the cultural change is a tricky one, and we see it quite a lot, because cultural resistance happens naturally when there is a big initiative, introduction of metadata governance principles, and here I guess really it's important to create a strong data culture. It's not only about really data catalog, it's more a culture within the organization that everyone understands the value of the data, what they can do with it, and what's the risk of not governing data. And here I also want to say, like, building strong data culture is crucial, because now we are living in the era of AI, and like in this world now, the data needs to be healthy. People really know what data they are using, what's the source of the data. So really understanding the role of data in decision making and the impact of data will help organizations to make right decisions, and also make other stakeholders understand the importance of the catalog, because catalog is where you can find the right data quite easily, and you can also understand the very important aspects of it. What's the value of it? What's the quality of it? How it's governed? Who owns it? And so on. So I guess that strong data culture will really help solving the cultural resistance. I also want to give one final suggestion. Is just everything as we do. People we like to be incentivized. We like to get rewarded. So like using data catalog can be incentivized as well. We can encourage collaboration. We can really announce success stories of different businesses using the data catalog, the good things they are getting out of it. So it will just encourage other businesses to get in, increase their adoption. So it doesn't need to be a boring tool or a project. It's really there to help business. So I guess that kind of incentivization would really help organizations to increase adoption.
For sure. I'm just conscious of coming up on time, and we've got a couple of questions that have come through. But David, are there any kind of like tips or anything that you would see from Amplify's perspective that would help?
So whistle stop two of the things that are coming to mind. So the culture point, just to double down on Ozge's piece there around culture, highly relevant. Easy to forget that your catalog and the initiatives around that can be a big proponent for you making good strides in establishing and growing out that the culture that you're after. So if you're moving to that kind of federated governance model that you aspire to, for example, you need to think about how you enable your people and get them ready for that, and through a data catalog, how you can help them close any gaps in their skills or their knowledge. I think there's an op model piece linking back to one of Ozge's previous points as well around, we should be thinking about kind of product owner and administrative roles for your catalog as well. So you need your product owner to bang the drum for that capability strategically in your organization and why it deserves a place at the table and in the business, and that you've got those administrative roles that are kind of interlinked with service desks or whatever that kind of make it seamless and don't feel like it's sort of tacked on to kind of business as usual kind of features and functionality in your organization. The last one I would call out is that we've talked about skills and we've talked about enablement, but those alone will only get you so far when it comes to data catalog implementation. You need the structures and the momentum in place to keep that catalog fresh in terms of its content. You need to keep curating it. It's not once and done. And the better you do of that particular job, the more likely you are to see recurring users and kind of continued adoption, and they're going to keep coming back for more.
100%. No, they're all really good points. And like I said, I think that people aspect is that kind of common thread all the way through it, right? Is that it's definitely, I think of all the kind of data disciplines, that kind of the governance and topping the metadata up and topping the catalog up and making sure it's fresh, I think is all really good stuff. So thank you both very much. I did say we try and get around some questions. Our good friend Steve Tuck has asked a couple of questions, but I'm going to ask one of them just because of conscious of time. So one of the things that obviously came up, which is more of a technical question, is I know, David, you mentioned it, like data lineage is something that you might be looking at doing in future once you have your catalog up and running. So the question that was asked is, how critical is it that the data catalog and data lineage are integrated and kind of work together?
It's interesting because in so many capabilities and solution offerings out there, they're naturally stuck together as part of the offering, right? And you get one from the other almost. If I can go and scan my metadata, that lineage picture is starting to emerge, hopefully without too much manual intervention. I think if you're in a place where that maybe isn't the case and you've got it living in two different places, or that there's a chance that may come to pass, my only concern that springs to mind just now would be if you're thinking about user experience and you're thinking about kind of keeping people in the same solution and navigating through that journey. I wouldn't want them coming into the catalog for one thing and then dropping out and having to go to a completely different system for something else to do with lineage. I think what we see in the more popular and sticky catalog solutions like Alex Solutions is that, especially when it comes to lineage, you can go anywhere and you're never feeling like you're dropping out the solution, regardless of whether you start in the weeds of lineage or you start with a business term that you've heard and you're trying to make sense of. You can navigate through really seamlessly and never really feel like you've dropped out of the loop. Ozge, would you? Please don't tell me I'm wrong, right? We don't want that.
I totally agree with you. I think they really go side by side. I can't even imagine a catalog without lineage. And I'm not saying lineage shouldn't be a stopper if the organization is not ready to, create those integrations, build complex automated lineages in day one. But we still say just bring whatever information you have. It can be a manual representation of the lineage. It can be a logical lineage, but lineage is important to understand where the data is coming from, or if you make a change, what's the impact on it in the downstream for your maybe critical reports and so on. So really, it's part of the natural use of catalog. You try to understand the data, but you also understand the journey of the data. So I would definitely say, like, without worrying about technical limitations, the lineage should still be part of the catalog. And again, with the right tooling and technology selections, hopefully it will be more automated, so the maintenance of it won't be a big burden. But yeah, I think they should be in one place.
Agreed. Good. Cool. So listen, I'm going to kind of wrap things up here because I'm just conscious of like I said, time and everybody having other things to do. So I just want to say thank you to both of you for your time today, David and Ozge. Thank you both for joining us. One of the things we also talked about at the start of this here is if you are in the start of a data catalog project, or if you've tried to implement a catalog and it hasn't worked out and you'd like to, get some help and get some support with it. One of the things that we talked about midway through, I think, was around these kind of maturity assessments or readiness assessments, or ways of having some frameworks that you can kind of look at and assess, how am I doing, and how do I get to where I want to be. So just briefly, just for everyone who's watching, whether it's live or on demand, if you do need any support around this, there are frameworks that both Amplifi and Alex offer. And I think when we bring these together, so ours at Amplifi tend to be a bit more kind of multidisciplinary. They tend to have more, a kind of wider view of your readiness as an organization in lots of different areas. We have specific ones broken down into specific areas like metadata management, like data catalog. And then we can work obviously alongside Alex as our technology partner, where they have these kind of maturity and adoption frameworks where you can see during that very specific governance and kind of data catalog journey, which bits you need to work on to make sure that you have that adoption across your business, and you have a good maturity level of data catalog within your business. So there is definitely help out there. Between us, we have got tons of collateral and guides and information. I'm sure as part of the follow-up process, we'll send out the guide that we have that David actually helped co-author around how to make an implementation successful of a data catalog and the role metadata management plays in it. So yeah, there is definitely help out there for anyone who is having an issue with a data catalog project or is just about to get started. So yeah, finally, I will just say, David, Ozge, thank you both very much. Appreciate you both. And Ozge, just once again, Ozge, really appreciate you joining us when you're not feeling too great. So thank you so much.
It was fun. Fun conversation.
Enjoyed it very much. And hopefully we'll see you all again soon. So thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks
everyone.
Bye.